I'm Colonel Karen Lloyd. I'm the director of the Veterans History Project here at the Library of Congress. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to come see New York Times best-selling author Liza Munday, who's going to discuss her book, Code Girls, The Untold Story of American Women Code Breakers of World War II.
So it's really thrilling to be here. It's also very thrilling to be here during Women's History Month. When talking about Code Girls, about these thousands of women who came to Washington to join the U.S. military and support the war effort, I like to start with this slide because it really illustrates the plight of the educated woman in 1942. This photo shows the May Court at Goucher College in the spring of 1942. Some of you may know Goucher College back then was an all-girls school. The women who went there were called Goucher Girls, and located in downtown Baltimore, D.C. It's now a coeducational university in suburban Towson, but at the time it was a city school. Many of the young women who attended there were city girls who grew up in Baltimore, who walked to classes, in some cases couldn't afford to board because, of course, they had grown up during the Depression, and who were very, very devoted and motivated to get a great four-year liberal arts education. Goucher was a very well-respected university. Its dean, Dorothy Stimson, was a noted expert on Copernicus. The English professor, Ola Winslow, was the first American woman to win a Pulitzer Prize for biography. So top-notch faculty, very tough school. And these young women were even more unusual than they would have known because at this time in American life, only 4% of American women attained a four-year college degree. And what I love about this particular photo is that unbeknownst to anybody, including their colleagues on the platform, two of these women, this is Jacqueline Jenkins, that was her name at the time. Later on when she married, she would be Jacqueline Jenkins Nye, the mother of Bill Nye, the science guy. So you can get a sense of her intellectual chops, as well as her friend Gwyneth Gaminder. These two young women had already been secretly selected and tapped by the U.S. Navy, and they were receiving training in cryptanalysis, which was a field that they would never have heard of, that nobody had ever heard of. They were receiving weekly instruction in a locked classroom at the top of Goucher Hall, taught by Ola Winslow, the English teacher who doubtless was only maybe a chapter ahead in the correspondence course that the U.S. Navy had compiled to teach them this arcane field that had been around since the time of Julius Caesar, or probably since the time that human beings learned to write or communicate at all, because, you know, it is sort of human instinct to send secret communications to somebody who you have an urgent message for and not have anybody else be able to listen in. And so this field had been around really for centuries, but not so much in the United States, and nobody really in the mainstream had heard of it. And so they were being taught all of a sudden in great secrecy. They couldn't tell their brothers, their boyfriends, their family members, they couldn't tell their roommates what they were doing. They were learning how to take frequency counts. They were learning the behavior of letters in the English language and the French language. They were learning how alphabets could be scrambled, tables could be constructed in order to disguise secret communications. And the reason that that was happening, of course, was because in December of 1941, on December 7th, the Pacific Fleet had been attacked at Pearl Harbor. It was a great shock and surprise to the nation, to the world. It was a surprise attack. We hadn't seen it coming. We lost thousands of young American servicemen. And so we were launched formally into World War II. World War II, of course, had been raging in Europe for several years. We knew that we were going to join the fighting at some point, but we didn't know that it was going to happen abruptly after December 7th. The next day, of course, Congress declares war on Japan. 3 days later, Germany declares war on us. And all of a sudden, the U.S. is launched into what was called total war. All the young men signed up to fight. Japan thought that the attack at Pearl Harbor would bring us to our knees, that it would demoralize us, that we would allow them to keep the holdings in the Pacific that they were conquering even as they were bombing Pearl Harbor. And it had the opposite effect on the American public. We rose up in arms. Every family was determined to contribute to the war effort. Every young man wanted to be in military uniform. And all of a sudden, all the young men were shipping out to the Pacific, to islands, that most Americans had never heard of, to the European theater. Men were suddenly on convoys going to Europe. It was just an evacuation of the men. So at the same